Hi everyone, and a big welcome to the Living with SMA podcast. We talk about all things spinal muscular atrophy related, but topics discussed are not exclusively for individuals with SMA, so there should be something here for everyone. We also do things differently. For starters, our charity SMA UK uses different hosts, and everyone involved gets a final say in the creative process of making these episodes. We cut through the jargon, and the content is accessible for everyone. All the stories are individual, and we are committed to sharing as many different perspectives as we can for our listeners. So if you're listening to this and have a burning desire to talk about a particular subject, then please reach out to us on our social media channels or send us a quick email. And remember, no topic is off the table. If there is something the SMA community wants to talk about, this is the place. We really hope you enjoy the podcast, and please do connect with our charity and share your comments online and let us know what you think. From all the team at SMA UK, thank you for listening.
3, 2, 1, yeah!
Hello everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Living with SMA podcast. Now, today's episode, we are going to be taking a look at the topic of mental health, and in particular, we're going to be looking and talking about how mental health affects people with disabilities in particular. I've got two guests joining me today as well, and they're going to be sharing their personal stories and journeys with mental health. So it's going to be a very intimate chat today and hearing and sharing our stories. So, should we start off with some introductions? Let's see who we are talking to today. I might as well kick things off myself. You may know me already as one of the regular hosts of the SMA podcast. My name is Ross Lamon. I'm 29 years old and I have SMA type 3. I live in Cornwall and I am a lifestyle and disability blogger and radio host. So I'm going to hand over now to Becca, if you can give us a little intro to who you are,
Cool.
please.
Hi everyone, I'm Becca, I'm 24, and I have SMA type 2. I live in West Sussex, down south, and I work in PR for a financial services company, live in my own place, yeah.
Brilliant. And Ellie.
Hello, I'm Ellie. I am an integrative art psychotherapist. I live in Southampton, Winchester Way in Hampshire. And I've been a carer for Becca before and / kind of currently every now and then. And also have my own private practice as well. Really interested in discussing mental health around physical disability. I don't have SMA myself or a physical disability, but just really recognizing that there is a sort of missing point there.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting today to have this sort of new aspect to our chat, because obviously we're going to be hearing more about Becca's story and journey with mental health. But I think it's really interesting to have your input today as well, Ellie, from a more sort of professional background as well, but also there's a personal relationship and bond there with you guys as well. So it's going to be really interesting to have this chat today. Now, mental health is obviously a huge subject and incredibly important for us to talk about. I wanted to start off with just sort of sharing these figures here. Now, I've got them written down here, and it obviously, just to make you aware, obviously the figures are always changing, but these are from the Mental Health Foundation. So apparently there are more than 15 million people in the UK, which makes up 30% of people who live with one or more long-term conditions. And out of those 15 million people with conditions, more than 4 million of those also struggle with their mental health. So we're talking huge numbers here. Ellie, I wanted to start off with you as the professional of the group. What is mental health in general? Because I feel like it's very easy for all of us just to get that difference between just having a general bad day like we all have, but we're here to talk about actual, mental health. So could you sum up what that is
Yeah,
and the
big
difference,
question.
please?
And as you say, it affects a large proportion of us. And if I'm honest, doing assessment, I have a couple of questions in there that are talking about whether you have suicide idealization or you self-harm, and in those questions I think I'd be more worried if someone says no, never ever thought about what's the point, never ever kind of wondered, why am I doing all of this is mad, especially in this day and age and what we're going through at the moment, in the sense of a collective consciousness. So I think, as you said, it does affect us, all of us. And I suppose if it's all the way from anxiety to depression to DID, multiple personality, DPD. So it's a massive range that we're talking about here as well. And if it starts to affect your day-to-day life, if we can't get out of bed, if work is becoming too much, if family situation, something's happening, we want to work that out, identity, self-worth is so low that week is being affected in our day-to-day life. And as I said, I think that's with quite a few people probably listening to this going, do I fit into that category or not? That's for only us to decide as individuals, I think, to be honest. And there's always stuff you can find out about ourselves. Use the way.
Definitely. And I think what you said there is really important, that it is something that will affect us all, whether it's us personally or whether it's a friend or a family member. There is always going to be a connection within our lives to mental health. So it's really important that we talk about these things, and it comes with a bit of awareness as well. Becca, I want to sort of, if it's okay with you, hear a little bit about your journey now, whatever you're sort of comfortable to share in terms of your mental health journey, and how did it all begin? Sort of, at what stage did you realize that you might need a little bit of extra
Yeah, sure.
help?
So I'm 24 now, and I think sort of the turning point for me was when I was around sort of 14, almost 15, I think. I had a very, obviously, there was a lot of issues, like medical issues and stuff growing up, the same as everyone else for listening to this podcast. But in terms of my family life and my home life, I had an extremely supportive family. I have a younger sister and a brother, and we are very kind of cohesive, if you can use that. But I kind of hit 14 and started really, really worrying about going out and doing things away from my mum. And obviously that age is the point where, you're going out with friends and stuff, like you're starting to do things on your own. And, most of that's just kind of excitement and, like learning how many of the boundaries you can push. But I think for me, I was so worried that, was I going to go out and kind of choke in public and not know, my friends wouldn't know what to do, and there would be nobody nearby to help me. So I started kind of trying to mitigate those worries by having carers close by. But at the time I was using agency carers, and not many of them knew me. And all of this was kind of, I didn't understand why I was worried about that, or why those things were making me panic. And I didn't explain them to anybody because I thought it was really silly. And I remember the turning point for me was a day where I was meant to get the train to Brighton, not even with friends, with a carer. And I got the train and I felt so sick all the way on the train. And I got there and I had a really bad stomach, felt really sick. And I almost vomited on the side of the road because of how sick I felt. And I decided that I wanted to go home, and I said to the carer, I was like, I'm not well. I think I've got a bug. I'm not well. So we went home and everything, and I remember that evening, and Mum was like, so what's wrong? Like, what's happened? And I remember just falling apart. And I just said I just felt so scared to go anywhere and do anything because of what might happen with my condition, basically. And that was kind of the turning point for me, because that was when I realized that actually it was really affecting what I was doing and what I was able to do with my life, and B, the moment that I said to other people that I was struggling. And I think because I've been trying to hold it in for quite a long time, at that point I went downhill very, very quickly. And I went through my GCSEs and sort of the first year of college, literally only leaving the house for school and for those singular lessons. And I did not leave the house other than that. Every morning I would wake up and feel instantly sick. I would, and I have really physical symptoms from anxiety as well, which obviously with SMA can be much more damaging. So I would have kind of like cyclic vomiting. So I could be sick, 2 or 3 times in a morning before going to school. And obviously with SMA, that has a big risk of aspiration, and aspiration pneumonia. And it was kind of a vicious cycle, because my whole anxiety was around my health, and making my condition worse. And all of my symptoms from anxiety were then making it worse. So it was very, very difficult to combat. So at like 16, I went into CAMS therapy. And even back then there was an 18-month waiting list, which seems pretty quick compared to what it is now. But there was an 18-month waiting list, but my GP was exceptionally good and managed to bump me up in the waiting list because of how physically ill and how much worse it was making my condition. And I kind of went through those therapy sessions and stuff to help with my anxiety, and it improved. It was very slow. Took kind of 18 months to really, be able to kind of get back to normality. And then when I went to uni, I kind of went from anxiety to depression instead. I still had anxiety, still had panic attacks, but I've learned through CAMS and through CBT. Yeah, I always get it confused between CBT and CBD, which is cannabis, so not that one. I learned through that therapy to be able to kind of learn some coping mechanisms to ground myself, to cope. But the depression was something that I couldn't learn coping mechanisms for, and I couldn't learn, ways to kind of combat that. And that was more scary. Not at the time, but looking back, that was harder for me, because nobody could, say, if you do this, this, and this, you'll be able to get through it. And if I still struggle with that, I'm still in therapy. I've been in and out of therapy now for 7 years, and I know exceptionally well now how to kind of navigate that and how to deal with it. But I've kind of had to make peace with the fact that it's going to be something that I live with for the rest of my life. It's probably going to be something that fluctuates, and most of the time I can cope fine. But it was and is still a massive learning curve with how to kind of cope. And even 7 years on, 7 years through therapy, I still kind of hit points where I'm like, okay, this is a new thing, like, this is a new feeling, what do I do with this? And I think 90% of all my mental health problems have stemmed from like my condition, my disability, whether it being my actual health, whether it being all of the carers that we need to have. I have had a lot of issues around that and things, and I think there's so many more things that we have to deal with because of our disability, and I think that's kind of why it's important to talk about, because so many people, I think, are probably in the same boat but really don't know how to bring it up, and have kind of a shame around the fact that we've grown up and been able to get through all of these surgeries, all of these therapies and stuff, and then this is something that kind of isn't spoken about, and you don't know how to bring it up with your family when it happens. So yeah.
Exactly. No, it's incredibly important. And just what you said there as well about the fact that as people with disabilities, it's almost like we've already got
Yeah.
enough on our plate, like to deal with physically. And then when you add the mental health
Yeah.
aspect on top of that, because there is no sort of quick fix, especially when it comes to things with disabilities, because the disability is the root of the problem that's causing all the anxiety and everything. But though, unfortunately, that's out of
Mm.
our hands, and we can't do anything about the disability. So it's almost like a
Yeah.
vicious cycle,
Yeah,
isn't
definitely.
it? It is. And Ellie, as a sort of trained therapist, obviously hearing Becca's story there, and obviously you guys, tell me about the process of how you guys met, and how it was for you to sort of hear this aspect. Like, was you aware of much disability related mental health issues before you
No,
met
no,
Becca?
not at all. I had started my life in a very different way. I was in sort of sales. I lived in Hong Kong for a bit and sold art out of a gallery there, etc. And came back from that world and went on cruise ships and sold art there, and was so a very, very different life. And when I came back from that and realized sales was not me, and I I was selling my soul along with it. I realized that I was really interested in mental health, having been through a mental health journey myself. And I'd seen through the artwork and selling the art that people had real emotional reactions to the artwork, whatever the person. And on cruise ships, I saw a lot of people, obviously, because it's quite a good way to go on holiday if you've got a disability, and sort of bit of an easier place to be settled and know that you're back on and off and etc. Um, so I sort of met a few people that had bought art off me and had told me their story in mental health wise and why that picture spoke to them. So leaving that world, I went to go and train, and I sort of went into a master's. And in doing this master's, I realised I hadn't worked with anyone in a professional but very personal element. I'd just been, in business really. So I was looking for a job role that could give me this personal but professional element, and I found Becca, who was looking for carers, who had moved to Winchester to do her degree also. So it's fantastic. I was like, oh, I'm doing my master's and you're doing your degree. My master's in London, but it was still great. We ended up doing many a long stint in the library together throughout. Yes, all the fun. And yeah, it was just perfect because Becca was so able to tell me how she wanted care, so able to train me, talk me through. But I hope don't mind Becca me saying in a sense, but what I noticed was that Becca was feeling very mentally unwell while I sort of met her at uni, and and I suppose because I was doing my master's in integrative psychotherapy, I was maybe able to pick up on some key things, and a bit spacey at times, or panicky at times, and no, I just found that no one in the care system that I was then employed by was asking any of these questions. We were obviously worried about her physical health, and we had to, fill in every care report when it came to that, or any aspiration, or any, cough assist we did, or any nebulizer, or any illness. But no one was writing about her mental health state at that time, or what was going on. So I think we kind of met in a time where I was incredibly interested in it and doing a a 4-year master's, which is a bit insane. And so it was the only thing that was on my mind. And Becca was doing her degree and feeling all these things, as she was saying just then, but not really knowing how to talk about it or what to say, and it being an extra worry in being at university as well, which is a horrendous place at times as it is. so yeah.
Yeah. You could almost say it's almost like, as cheesy as it sounds, like it's kind of fate that you guys found each other at a time when maybe you needed each other, and it kind of works out well in the end. Becca, at what stage did you feel comfortable to start sort of opening up a bit to Ellie, in the sense of, it's finding the boundary, isn't it, between, you've got a professional relationship, she is employed as your carer, but you obviously got on well enough as friends as well, and you had that bond that I guess at some point you felt comfortable enough to open up and start talking to her a little bit about your mental health.
Our relationship was always interesting because I think, like, now, yes, we are good friends now, and now, sort of since I left uni and since, I moved back home, our relationship has definitely changed and shifted. But when we were at uni and stuff, yeah, we always got on well. We always had good rapport and stuff. But there was always a level of like professional boundaries, that I think I hadn't seen before in a carer, and I think possibly simply because of like your personality, Ellie, or also because of obviously like the training you were going through, and you were taught, weren't you, to kind of make sure you stay professional and things like that. So it wasn't so much I felt like I could open up because we were friends. I think it was because I felt safe, and I knew that I could kind of trust that what I was going through, Ellie would be able to hold that, and be able to take that and, not panic and not, freak out or not know what to do. And I think like a lot of the triggers that I worried about when I was trying to hide things from people, I worried a lot about, the fact that if I revealed too much, carers wouldn't leave. And if the carers left, and obviously I couldn't finish uni, throughout the whole of uni, the care was pretty turbulent anyway. There were several periods where Ellie for the whole time was meant to be working part-time, so 24 hours a week. But I'd say for more than half of it, there were times where she was doing like 48 to 72 hour shifts in, because there wasn't enough people, and my mum would have to come and take over and stuff. So I think it's very difficult to work out the balance of being able to be yourself around carers who you are with 24/7, who you never have time away from, but also knowing that if something happens and that carer wants to leave, then it's your life effectively that it's going to affect. It's not theirs. Other people can get a job specifically in the care industry extremely quickly. So I think I was always conscious of that, and I knew that, Ellie knew how to do a panic attack. She knew how to deal with days where I did not want to get out of bed and refused to do anything or whatever, or zoned out. And I think that was the reason why I was able to open up, because I knew that, yeah, it effectively wasn't going to scare her. And I think that was something that I hadn't had before, because of the fact that, carers aren't trained in understanding mental health. We had to, once I kind of opened up and we'd spoken a little bit and stuff, like I think Ellie and my mum and stuff tried to work out, how to help the other carers understand it and stuff, because, the other carers didn't know how to deal with my panic attacks. When I kind of started self-harming, a couple of times, obviously I'm not strong enough to do any real damage, but, I couldn't get rid of it on my own or whatever. Those carers were very scared, because, they're effectively in charge of my well-being, and they, like Ellie said, they've been taught how to, do my nebulizer and my cough assist and everything, and I had lots of training on that, but they weren't taught how to deal with any of the other stuff. So yeah, that was kind of the main turning point, I think.
No, it's really interesting that we were just talking about the fact that when it comes to care, specifically with agencies as well, there's so much training that goes into the physical aspect of being a carer. You get taught all the manual handling and all the stuff that you need to know. But like you said, there's just not that mental health aspect to it, is there, Ellie?
No, there isn't. And also there isn't, there's a form of training that I don't really know how you explain what it is that you go through when we're training as a therapist, but this ability to separate yourself from the situation that's going on in front of you, from a person that's going on in front of you. Because if we sit there and we project all our stuff into it, at the same time, then all we're doing is getting caught up in all the transference and the counter transference, and kind of then suddenly we're in this big pickle, and we don't know where we're going with it. And that's never taught, to hold ourselves as carers, as I think just to be a carer, you've usually gone through some sort of element of mental health yourself, or something in your family, that you find is a lovely way to then connect work and life. But a lot of us don't do our own. And so in not doing our own work, we don't see when we're getting caught up in our clients' work to do. And I think that's something that's never spoken about. We also don't have a place as carers. Okay, we have supervision. If we're with a company, we don't really have a place because our supervisors and our managers have never been trained in mental health. So we may have a place we can go, we need more space and time here, or help us with our client in this way, um, in a medical sense, or Becca needs a new whatever. But we can't sit there and say, hey, I don't know if it was about that shift, but I feel really overwhelmed about that shift. And everyone kind of freezes up and goes, well, maybe we should look into this, or maybe look into getting a different healthcare professional. And it doesn't help you if CA is the healthcare assistant or the PA. Hearing that, just feel like it's your client as well. So there's all these relationships going on, these elements of relationship going on in a carer role that is never spoken about and is so important. And I think that's potentially what I was able to bring, was this separation. When Becca was going through what she was going through, it wasn't mine, and it didn't need to be mine. So I could sit back and be with it without the fear, and work out and think about logically then, okay, so it's happened. Do I call an ambulance? Do I call mum? Is there a care plan in the sense of Becca's mental health versus whether she's aspirating? Yeah, so it's Becca is. And being able to step back from the situation and not make it mine. I think that was potentially what Becca was thinking about.
It almost sounds as well like you guys almost really helped each other, in the sense of, Becca, you felt comfortable to almost open up and talk to Ellie a bit because she had that experience and that knowledge and understanding of mental health already. And also, Ellie, Becca almost opened your eyes a little bit to the disability world, and sort of improved your awareness and your knowledge of
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. And I think when I suppose moving on a little bit to the next step of when I realised that I could handle the situation potentially a bit better, and Becca realised that she maybe needed a bit more help, or we needed to look for um, therapist, because I couldn't be her therapist because I was her carer. And I don't even think at that time I was qualified to be. And so when we started looking at that, it then really opened up eyes of what's available for people with physical disability. just down to having you got into the room, which is quite incredible. And so we went on that or two, and yeah, very, very much so did it open up my eyes to, and to what people with disability go through on a day-to-day basis. You know, just for example, not wanting to get up in the morning with anxiety and depression when you have a disability is not wanting to be touched, rolled 4 or 5 times, wasted, feeling heavy in the voice, you know, feeling vulnerable anyway mentally, and then you've got to go through this whole vulnerable experience to then get on top of it. And it's again something not discussed, and in a very human way that it needs to be. I think when you train as a carer, it is discussed in the sense of keeping your modesty and you know, hearing what you would like versus what we would like to do. And if it's maybe a bit harder for us, but it's easier for you, then we've got to think about that. But not in the sense already suffering with anxiety and depression, and you know, you've got to have such elements of yourself, you know, touched, even as a process of getting up, different or going to bed. You know, there's so many times I'm thinking it's coming up in my head of times where it's a lot different for someone with disability. Or just to get into bed, take off your makeup, you know, it becomes small things become so difficult when you have mental health issues and depression. Just, you know, taking off your makeup, brushing your teeth, hygiene goes down, and it's a different.
And Becca, why do you think that people with disabilities in general are more likely to struggle with their mental health?
Well, I think there's so many reasons. I think it's important to distinguish between like physical disabilities and like learning disabilities, because I think they're two very, very separate things. And I think because of my journey and because of towards the end of uni, but by this time Ellie had worked with me for getting on 3 years. And when I was doing my dissertation, I did it on the portrayal of physical disability in cinema and in books, and in quite a lot of my analytical work, I looked at kind of mental health and how that's portrayed with disabilities and stuff. And when I did the research, it was really interesting that I found quite a lot of research in people with learning difficulties and their mental health, and like literally hardly any on physical disabilities. So I think they're very different, and I think there's a lot of reasons. I think one of the biggest ones probably is, you know, like your health. I think I've kind of realized I have quite a lot of medical trauma, which I didn't even know was really a thing. And yeah, you know, I've like when I had spinal surgery, I think a lot of people listening will know how scary that was and how difficult it was. My specific experience, I was told that I would wake up and not be intubated or anything, but I woke up with an intubation tube in, and I couldn't speak, obviously. So I had no idea what had gone on. My mum had been told I wouldn't wake up for at least 24 hours. So they'd sent her away because they said that, you know, I would need her over the next 8 or so days in ITU. And I woke up while she wasn't there, like the sedation wore off. So I have very vivid memories of waking up, thinking everything had gone wrong, being on my own for more than 4 hours, not being able to say anything. You know, they thought they had damaged my vocal cords because they struggled with intubation, and that's why the tube was still in, because they thought I wouldn't speak again. Obviously I did, but I suffered with like damage to my throat, so I now can only pureed food. So I've had a big risk of like aspiration over the years. You know, all those kind of medical traumas that I can remember, but then also the ones that I can't remember, from, you know, getting my first body brace fitted when I was 18 months old, and my mum, has told me that they had to literally pin me down while I was screaming, to do the, I don't know, mesh stuff to like cast the brace. And yeah, I think I didn't even realize that. And like Ellie said, like having someone, like roll you or touch you every day and stuff, like can have so many random triggers. I have a real phobia of gloves. And I've got better with it, but I've realized that I think that is from, being in hospital for months and months on end. And, I associate people wearing gloves to me, feeling pain or being ill or whatever. And it's something as simple as that, like carers are required to wear gloves if they're agency workers. So like small triggers every day that occur can be very difficult. So I think, yeah, medical side of it is a huge thing. I do think having carers is, at least for me, has been a massive reason why I struggle with my mental health. I've had carers since I was 5 years old, so I'm 24 now. I reckon I'm on my 140th carer, I think. And by the time I was 19, that's what 14 years of having care. And Ellie was the first one that I had been able to form a bond with, in the sense that I was happy to spend time with her, but she was able to separate herself from me. I'd had carers that were, like 40 or 50 or whatever, that, didn't get me involved in their lives, but they weren't somebody that I was able to like converse with and spend time with and stuff. I've had a lot of carers that were not able to hold their own. And that their became my, can I swear? I don't know. That became my
Done it now.
and it was very difficult. I've had carers kind of emotionally abuse me, that it took me years to kind of realize, like years down the line in therapy, when my therapists had gone, that's not okay that like someone did that. And I was 10 years old, I didn't know. And like fear of abandonment, like like every time someone hands in their notice, specifically if you had a good bond with them, I have massive fear of abandonment, which does seep into my relationships and other things, and I've had to work on separating the two. Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of issues with guilt, and I think that's been a lot of my depression. I felt so guilty, for my siblings, for everything I had to see growing up, for my parents, like for the lives that, they had turned upside down, and never thought they would have to, have such a strain on their relationship, etc., etc. So many things. I think, everyone goes through with the disability, the whole, like why me? Like why is this happening? Like it's not fair. But I think obviously a lot of people are able to find outlets. They go for a run, or they go to the gym, or I don't know, they do kickboxing or whatever. For people that are really physically disabled, obviously we can't do that. And we're essentially being watched 24/7. Even if the carer's in the other room. I had a carer's room at uni, but whatever I did, if I'd thrown something on the floor, if I'd broken something, a carer would come in and have to sort that out. And I think I really struggled with not being able to feel my emotions for fear of what was going to happen. So I think there's so many reasons why disabled people, experience worse mental health.
Yeah, I mean you pretty much summed it all up there. It's a very it's a very heartfelt answer, because there are so many different aspects of it's stressful enough going through all these physical changes and the fears that come with physical decline in your health and things, and then there's the added element of having a carer and trying to get a carer, maintaining care. I had it even last week. You have conversations with the council. You have to go through reviews of your care packages and things like that. And those conversations in itself is incredibly stressful, because you think, oh my God, they're going to reduce my hours. I'm not going to be able to do this or that. So there's so many elements that all these little bits just add up to your overall mental
and
health.
you never get a break.
Yeah.
It's not possible, like I
No.
went on holiday with Ellie to Dubai last month, and I emailed all my carers and I said, for this week I'm not looking at my emails, like please send any emails to my mum, she will deal with it in this situation, and I try my hardest to make sure that I try and separate it, but you can't really, like you are responsible for a team. And this time last year, roughly, I took over my own care team, so I am now the official employer. I do all the supervisions, the payroll, and I also work full time. So that time commitment is such a stress, but also I am now responsible for 5 people's, livelihoods, their emotions, their, career plans, whatever. And that is a whole nother level of trying to maintain boundaries. And with what Ellie said about the fact that, when you used to have supervisions with the care company and stuff, there was nothing in place to help you. Well, I am now the one that has to do the supervisions. And I really think there should be some kind of external, the fact that I pay a small amount of money each month to a payroll company who I send in the hours and they do the tax for, I really think it should be a thing included in most people's packages, that you're given money to, pay some kind of company or small organization to run supervisions and then, deal with those, because I would always be there for my carers, because, I owe them a lot and they are good people. But one, that's very difficult for me to hold if they tell me any of their stuff. And 2, most of them wouldn't want to, because I am their employer. There's no other line of management to go to. And I think that is a big issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. The boss now.
Which is,
Guy,
has got many positives to it too. I think we could spend a whole different podcast talking about care systems and and care companies and mental health around that as well. I agree with Becca. I think, some money towards an outsourced HR system, or someone that can hold because the carers are individuals potentially going through their own mental health issues too. And so
Exactly.
it's almost like with Becca, the sandwich is switched, and when what we were experiencing down here, she then has to experience on the other side of separating yourself, your stuff with their stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a huge subject, and it's definitely, like you said, something that needs more sort of heart put into it and more thought. It definitely needs more to be done. This is a subject that we could go on and talk about for hours, but I just want to thank you guys for sharing your personal stories with us today. We are going to do a part 2. We're going to do another episode with you guys, where we're going to look a little bit more in depth at what support actually is out there available, and what can be done to improve, like some of the suggestions we just made at the end there, what improvements still need to be made, and sort of the importance of starting these processes from a younger age as well. So we're going to go into all of that in part 2. So yeah, I just want to end this on a thank you note. Just thank you guys for sharing your personal story and your relationship and backgrounds. And yeah, we will continue this into part 2. So thank you for that.
Thanks for having us.
No worries. And if anybody listening today as well has any questions or any thoughts regarding any of the subjects that we have spoken about today, please do get in touch with SMA UK. We will leave an email address in the bio of this video. So yeah, please get involved. And if you've got any questions that you would like any of us to answer in the next episode, we will definitely do that. Thank you for watching, and we will see you again very soon. Goodbye.
You've been listening to the Living with SMA podcast. We hope you can join us again next time, but in the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. You can find out more on our website at smauk.org.uk.